will the Department of Justice provide to the committee all documents, all correspondence between the department and Alvin Bragg's office and Fonnie Willis's office and Letitia James's office?
The offices you're referring to are independent offices of state.
I get that. I get that. The question is whether or not you will provide all of your documents and correspondence. That's the question. I don't need a history lesson.
Well, I'm going to say again, we do not control those offices. They make their own decisions.
The question is whether you communicate with them, not whether you control them. Do you communicate with them, and will you provide those communications?
If you make a request, we'll refer it to our Office of Legislative Affairs.
But see, here's the thing. You come in here and you lodge this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, give us the correspondence, and then if it's a conspiracy theory, that will be evident. But when you say, well, we'll take your request, and then we'll sort of work it through the DOJ's accommodation process, then you're actually advancing the very dangerous conspiracy theory that you're concerned about.
I noticed Mr. Gaetz, who took you on first, is not here now. And that's unfortunate because he is living testament to the fact and direct evidence that you have not weaponized the Justice Department. He was investigated for sex trafficking, and while many expected a prosecution, you chose not to prosecute this very active Republican. Is that true? You did not prosecute him?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what is in the public record and what's not, so I'm just not going to comment on that.
Now, you were a judge, once nominated to the highest court in our country. When you were a judge, I'm just curious, did you ever make political donations to partisan candidates?
No.
No, and you didn't because that would create the potential appearance of impropriety.
I didn't because there's a federal rule barring federal judges from making contributions.
Right, but under that same theory of attacks on the judicial process, like, shouldn't someone be owed like a jury of their peers and a judge that's non-biased rather than getting a judge from your political opponent's donor file?
I'm well aware that you're not asking a hypothetical. You're asking me to comment on a jury verdict in another jurisdiction which has to be respected. I won't comment on it. That case is still ongoing. The defendant
Mr. Attorney General, I hadn't asked you about the verdict yet. We were getting there. I was talking about the judge. And so let me ask you this question about your time as a judge. Was there ever a time when you were a judge when you had a family member who was personally profiting off of the notoriety of a case that was before your court?
Look, I'm going to say again, it's very clear you're asking me to comment on a case in another jurisdiction.
No, wait, hold on, Mr. Attorney General. Did you ever have a family member profit off of the notoriety of any case that you sat over?
Say again, you're asking
yes or no?
You're asking me to comment on a case currently.
Well, it seems you're connecting the dots, Mr. Attorney General. I'm just asking you as to a general principle, but you are aware that Judge Merchan's daughter was profiting off of this prosecution. You are aware that that creates the appearance of impropriety. You know the very reason there's a federal rule against judges giving donations is because it is the very attack on the judicial process that we're concerned about.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with anything you just said, but I'm not going to comment on it.
Okay, so you won't comment on it, Mr. Attorney General, but you had no problem dispatching Matthew Colangelo. Who's Matthew Colangelo?
That is false. I did not dispatch Matthew Colangelo.
Matthew Colangelo became the Assistant Attorney General at the very beginning of the Biden administration. Without having been Senate confirmed, goes and gets this senior role at the DOJ, and then after, I believe it's Gupta replaces Colangelo, Colangelo makes this remarkable downstream career journey from the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and then pops up in Alvin Bragg's office to go get Trump. And you're saying that's just a career choice that was made that has nothing to do with the lawfare coordinated by the DOJ.
I'm saying it's false. I did not dispatch Mr. Colangelo anywhere.
Well, do you know how he ended up there?
I assume he applied for a job there and got the job.
But see, you know what?
I can tell you I had nothing to do with it.
Well, you might not have had anything to do with it, but we've got this contemporaneous evidence in Mr. Pomerantz's book. So Pomerantz writes this book, which I'm sure you're aware of, where he says, we put together the legal eagles to get Trump. We got all these folks together and we assembled them for that purpose. And so when we on the Judiciary Committee think about attacks on the judicial process, our concern is that the facts and the law aren't being followed. A target is acquired, here Trump, and then you assemble the legal talent from DOJ, Mr. Pomerantz, and you bring everybody in to get him. And meanwhile, the judge is making money on it. The judge is making money on it, or the judge's family is making money on it for stuff that you yourself wouldn't do. You know, no one's going to buy this. No one's going to believe it. It's going to create great disruption. And I am saddened by it because, like you, I have given my life to the law. I care deeply about the law. And I think that the lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
I just want to get this straight. Mr. Gaetz wants the Attorney General to reopen and publicize evidence from an investigation that a Donald Trump-appointed prosecutor closed against President Biden, while at the same time, Mr. Gaetz himself is being protected by the same DOJ policy that is refusing to voluntarily turn over evidence from Mr. Gaetz's sex trafficking investigation. Mr. Attorney General, can you just briefly, without going into the facts of that case, address why that is the DOJ policy as it relates to the current president and any other requests about closed investigations?
Yeah, without referencing any case, we try to protect the law enforcement files of the Justice Department so that in future investigations, people are willing to cooperate with us. We understand Congress's concerns, and we have an obligation to assess whether the information that we've provided is sufficient to accommodate the legitimate needs of the Congress. All of the reasons that Congress has given us for why they need the audio are satisfied with respect to the tapes. That is, all of the legitimate reasons given, the reasons that relate to legislative work of the committee. As to that, we've accommodated by providing the audio. We provided Mr. Herr's testimony in full, and we provided Mr. Herr's testimony report. We've gone as far as we can go to accommodate. We're trying to protect our ability to do investigations in this case and in any other case.
Mr. Attorney General, let's set the facts straight here. And my job is to kind of lead an intervention for my colleagues. I think they need it. The Attorney General did not prosecute Donald Trump in New York. It was the result of Donald Trump's choices. Donald Trump chose to live in New York. He chose to commit his crimes in New York. He was afforded a right to be tried by his neighbors, jurors, in New York. He chose that jury in New York, working with his counsel, and they chose to make him a 34-time over convicted felon. But some of the choices the department has made in the recent years is that the president that was first appointed, that Donald Trump appointed the U.S. attorney who is investigating the current president's son. Donald Trump appointed John Durham, who investigated the wild claims made by this committee during the Russia investigation. And Donald Trump appointed Robert Hur, who was kept on by the Biden administration. Also, you have the right in our country to aid yourself in your own defense and talk to investigators. You also have a right not to. Mr. Attorney General, did Donald Trump sit down for an interview in the Mueller investigation?
I actually don't know, but I'm not going to comment on other investigations.
He didn't. Did he sit down for an interview with investigators prior to the January 6th indictment?
I'm not going to comment on
He didn't. He also didn't sit down for an interview with investigators in the classified materials indictment, but President Biden did sit down for a voluntary interview with Robert Hur. A jury can't hold it against Donald Trump that he did not testify in his own defense in New York, but he promised everyone else in the country that he would. You can hold it against Donald Trump that he did not testify when you consider whether you should so blindly follow every wild claim that he makes.